I've worked night security for 8 years, but what happened during my 3 months at Riverside Memorial Cemetery still haunts me. I should have quit after the first week, but I needed the job. Single dad, custody payments, you know how it is. The position seemed perfect, quiet, decent pay, just me and the radio. Riverside Memorial spans 43 acres in Millfield, California, established in 1952. Beautiful place during the day, with rolling hills and century-old oak trees. At night, it's a different world entirely. My shift ran 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., Thursday through Monday. The security office sat near the main entrance, a small concrete building with monitors showing feeds from 12 cameras scattered throughout the grounds. Standard setup. Patrol every 2 hours, check the perimeter, log any disturbances. The first night was October 15th, 2023. Cool evening, light drizzle starting around midnight. I was reviewing the patrol checklist when I heard something outside the office door. Not footsteps exactly, more like a soft thud. When I opened the door, there was a small teddy bear sitting on the concrete step. Brown fur, red ribbon around its neck, maybe 6 inches tall. Clean, like it had just come from a store. I figured someone dropped it during visiting hours. Happens all the time at cemeteries. People leave flowers, photos, personal items. I brought it inside and put it in the lost and found box. The second night, October 16th, another toy appeared. This time a small wooden train car, painted red and blue. Same spot, right outside the door. No footprints in the damp earth around the building. No sign of anyone on the camera feeds. I checked every angle, the main entrance, the service roads, the chapel area. Nothing. By the third night, I was watching for it. Started my patrol at 11:30 p.m. instead of midnight, circled back to the office at 11:45. Nothing there. Checked the monitors continuously until 12:15 a.m. When I finally went outside for a smoke break at 12:30, there it was, a plastic dinosaur, green with white stripes. I called my supervisor, Marcus Henderson, the next morning. "Tom, people leave things at cemeteries all the time," he said. "Probably grieving relatives. Don't overthink it." But I was thinking about the timing. Always between midnight and 12:30 a.m. Always the same spot. Always toys that looked new and used. And the cameras never caught anything. The fourth night brought a small doll in a blue dress. The fifth, a toy car, a miniature 2018 Honda Civic, exactly like the one my daughter Emma played with at home. That's when I started taking pictures of each toy, documenting the pattern. Week 2 escalated things. The toys became more specific, more personal. A plastic stethoscope like the one Emma used with her doctor playset. A small book titled, Daddy's Little Girl. A miniature baseball glove. I'd played high school baseball, but that wasn't public information. I upgraded my documentation. Photos with timestamps, detailed descriptions, even measured the exact placement. Each toy appeared in the same 18-inch square area directly in front of the office door. No deviation. On October 28th, I decided to stay outside from midnight to 1 a.m. Set up a folding chair 15 feet from the door, thermos of coffee, direct line of sight to the usual spot. The night was cold, around 45 degrees, with fog rolling in from the valley. At 12:17 a.m., I saw movement in my peripheral vision. Not at the door, near the oak tree about 30 yards away. I grabbed my flashlight and moved toward it, but the beam revealed nothing. When I turned back, a toy airplane sat on the office step. A red biplane with my daughter's name, Emma, written in tiny letters on the side. That's when I knew someone was watching me. Someone who knew about Emma, knew about my routine, knew exactly when I'd be distracted. I called the police from my cell phone. Officer Sarah Martinez from Millfield PD arrived at 1:15 a.m. Professional, thorough, took my statement seriously. We reviewed all the camera footage together. 12 cameras, multiple angles, nothing. She suggested I file a report about potential stalking behavior, and recommended I request a partner for the remaining shifts. But the cemetery board had budget constraints. Marcus offered to increase patrols by the day shift supervisor, but I'd still be alone at night. I couldn't afford to quit, so I installed my own security measures. Motion-activated camera aimed at the door, recording to my phone. Sound-activated recorder in my pocket. October 30th, the toys stopped appearing. I thought maybe the police visit had scared off whoever was doing this. I was wrong. November 1st, instead of a toy, I found a photograph. Black and white, showing Emma walking to school. Taken from across the street, telephoto lens, professional quality. She was wearing her purple backpack, the one I'd bought her for the new school year. On the back of the photo, written in careful block letters, "Beautiful daughter." I called Officer Martinez immediately. This wasn't someone leaving random toys anymore, this was targeted stalking. She ran the photo for fingerprints, canvassed the school area, interviewed Emma's teachers. No leads, but she assigned extra patrol cars to our neighborhood. The next night, November 2nd, my motion camera caught something at 12:22 a.m. A figure in dark clothing approaching the door, face obscured by a hooded sweatshirt. They placed something on the step, then walked directly toward the camera. For exactly 3 seconds, I could see a face, middle-aged man, thin features, wire-rimmed glasses. Then he reached up and the camera went dark. The item he left was a small jewelry box, pink with ballerina inside. When I opened it, a tiny music box melody played. For Elise. The same song Emma was learning on piano. Inside the box was a note. "She plays beautifully. I listen every Tuesday." Emma's piano lessons were Tuesday afternoons at 4 p.m. That was enough. I called in sick the next day and drove straight to the police station. Officer Martinez reviewed my evidence file, 37 toys, 12 photographs, 2 videos, detailed logs. She agreed this constituted criminal stalking and assigned Detective James Morrison to the case. Detective Morrison had 23 years' experience, specialized in stalking cases. He reviewed my documentation and made a connection I'd missed. All the toys were brands sold exclusively at Millfield Toys and Games, a small shop on Oak Street, 3 blocks from Emma's school. We visited the store that afternoon. The owner, Mrs. Patricia Chin, recognized the toys immediately. "Oh yes, Mr. Garrett has been buying those for weeks. Such a devoted grandfather, always shopping for his granddaughter." Mr. Garrett. Paul Garrett, according to the credit card receipts. Address on Maple Avenue, 2 streets over from Emma's school. Mrs. Chin described him perfectly. Thin, wire-rimmed glasses, always wore a dark hooded sweatshirt. Detective Morrison ran Paul Garrett's name through the system. Previous arrests for trespassing, violation of restraining orders, and possession of surveillance equipment. 3 different families had filed complaints over the past 5 years. Same pattern, single fathers with young daughters, detailed surveillance, escalating behavior. We obtained a search warrant for his house. What we found in his basement changed everything. Detailed files on 7 different families, including mine. Photos, school schedules, home addresses, daily routines. Professional surveillance equipment worth thousands of dollars. And a wall-mounted map of Riverside Memorial Cemetery with my patrol routes marked in red ink. Paul Garrett had been using the cemetery's extensive grounds as a base of operations for months. He knew the camera blind spots, the patrol schedule, the exact timing of my rounds. The toys weren't random gifts. They were psychological manipulation, designed to create fear and establish control. But the most disturbing discovery was his project board for Emma. Photos spanning 3 months, detailed notes about her activities, and a timeline labeled Approach Plan, with dates extending into December. Detective Morrison arrested Paul Garrett at his workplace, maintenance supervisor at the Millfield School District. He had access to all the schools, legitimate reasons to be near playgrounds and school zones, and detailed knowledge of student schedules. During questioning, Garrett admitted to the cemetery stalking but claimed he was just trying to help, and wanted to be a good grandfather figure. He showed no remorse, only anger that his gifts weren't appreciated. Paul Garrett was charged with stalking, criminal trespass, and attempted kidnapping. The DA's office found evidence connecting him to similar incidents in 2 neighboring counties. He was sentenced to 8 years in state prison. I finished my contract at Riverside Memorial, but requested transfer to day shift security at a different location. The night shift had lost its appeal. Emma and I moved to a different school district, and I changed our phone numbers and daily routines. The toys are gone, but the memory lingers. Every time Emma plays piano, every time I hear "For Elise," I remember that someone was listening. Someone was watching. Someone was planning. The scariest part wasn't the supernatural. It was the realization that predators can be patient, methodical, and absolutely invisible until they decide not to be. Here's what I want you to think about. How well do you know the people who work around children in your community? Have you ever noticed someone paying too much attention to kids who aren't theirs? What would you do if you found unexplained items appearing in your workplace? Because sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones who look completely normal. The next incident happened 3 weeks later, when my replacement at Riverside Memorial found something that made my Toy Story seem like a warning rather than an isolated case. I worked overnight shift at McDonald's on Industrial Boulevard in Bakersfield for 2 years. What happened with the Happy Meal lady during November 2023 still makes me check my rearview mirror every night driving home. The McDonald's sat between a truck stop and 24-hour laundromat in a rough part of town, serving mostly highway traffic, truckers, and night workers getting off late shifts. Our overnight crew was just 3 people, me running drive-thru, Angela working grill and fryer, and supervisor Kevin handling front counter, cleaning, and prep work. I'd been working nights for 8 months by then. You'd get used to the regulars, truckers grabbing coffee, hospital workers stopping for dinner after 12-hour shifts, insomniacs who couldn't sleep. Most were decent people just trying to get through their night. But November brought someone different. November 8, 2023, around 2:30 a.m., this woman pulled up to our drive-thru in a beat-up 2009 Nissan Altima, gold color with a dent in the rear bumper, California plates starting with 8G. The car's muffler was loud. You could hear her coming from blocks away. Middle-aged woman, maybe early 50s, stringy brown hair that looked like it hadn't been washed in days. She wore a faded denim jacket over a white t-shirt with some kind of stain on the front. Normal enough for our usual clientele, except for what she ordered. "I need 6 Happy Meals," she said through our drive-thru intercom. Her voice sounded strangely excited, like a kid on Christmas morning. "All chicken nuggets, all apple slices, all chocolate milk. No toys needed." "That's $47.36 at the first window," I replied. "Perfect," she said, and I could hear her clapping her hands together. When she pulled around, she had the money ready, exact change counted out in bills and coins, organized in neat little piles on her dashboard. As I handed her the 3 bags of Happy Meals, she looked directly at me with this huge smile. "These aren't for me," she announced proudly. "They're for my friends at work. They get so hungry on the night shift." I figured she worked somewhere with a small crew, maybe a factory or warehouse with people who couldn't leave their posts. Happens all the time. People buy food for their coworkers. The next night, November 9th, same time, same car, same order. 6 Happy Meals, chicken nuggets, apple slices, chocolate milk. Exact change ready, same comment about her work friends. Angela noticed this time because the order was so specific and unusual. "That lady again?" she asked when I mentioned it. "Yeah. Must have hungry co-workers. 6 Happy Meals is weird though. Adults don't usually eat Happy Meals." She had a point, but we served weirder orders. Some people liked the portion sizes, others wanted the apple slices. Not our business to judge. Night 3, November 10th, she did something different. Ordered the same thing, paid the same way, but instead of driving off, she parked in our lot. I watched through the drive-thru window as she got out carrying all 6 Happy Meals and walked toward our front entrance. We locked the lobby at midnight for security, but customers could still see inside through the glass doors. Kevin was mopping the floor when she knocked on the glass. She stood there holding the Happy Meals, still smiling that huge smile, gesturing for him to let her in. Kevin looked at me questioningly. Policy said no customers inside after midnight, but she didn't look dangerous. Just a middle-aged woman with takeout food. He unlocked the door. "Hi there," she said, stepping inside like she belonged there. "I brought these for you guys." She walked straight to our front counter and set all 6 Happy Meals down in a perfect line, evenly spaced like she'd measured the distance between each bag. "Ma'am, you just bought those," Kevin said, confusion obvious in his voice. "I know. They're gifts. For my hard-working friends." We stood there staring as she arranged and rearranged the Happy Meals until they were positioned exactly how she wanted them. Then she pulled out her phone, an older iPhone with a cracked screen, and took several photos of the bags from different angles. "Ma'am, we can't accept food from customers," Kevin tried to explain. "Oh, you have to," she interrupted, her smile never wavering. "My friends are expecting their dinner. They depend on me to bring it every night." She took a few more photos, said, "Enjoy your meal, friends," and left before we could respond. We threw the food away after she was gone, but the whole interaction felt surreal. Night 4, November 11th, she did it again. Same routine, ordered 6 Happy Meals, drove around to the front, came inside, arranged them perfectly, took photos. This time she stayed longer, asking personal questions. "What's your name, honey?" she asked me. "How long have you worked here? Do you like the night shift?" I gave vague answers, but she seemed to memorize everything I said. "I love the night shift too," she continued. "So peaceful. So quiet. Just us friends taking care of each other. None of that daytime drama, you know?" She asked Kevin and Angela the same questions, our names, how long we'd worked there, what our favorite menu items were. She pulled out a small notebook and wrote down our answers. "I want to make sure I bring the right food for everyone," she explained. That's when we started feeling uncomfortable. This wasn't just someone buying food for coworkers anymore. Kevin called our manager, Rachel, the next morning. District policy was clear: be polite to customers, but call police if anyone becomes disruptive or threatening. The woman wasn't technically doing anything illegal, but the nightly ritual was getting weird. "Document everything," Rachel told him. "If she keeps coming back, we might need to trespass her from the property." Night 5, November 12th, things escalated. Same routine, but when she arranged the Happy Meals on our counter, she started talking to them like they were people. "This one's for Marcus," she said, touching the first bag gently. "He's been working so hard lately. Needs his energy." She moved to the second bag. "This one's for Jennifer. She's got kids at home, always worrying about them during her shift." Third bag. "Little Timmy gets hungry around 3 a.m. Growing boy needs his nutrition." None of us were named Marcus, Jennifer, or Timmy. Our name tags clearly displayed Lisa, Kevin, and Angela. "Ma'am," Kevin interrupted carefully. "Who are you talking to?" She looked at him like he'd asked the strangest question in the world. "My night shift friends, of course. They get so hungry working through the night. They depend on me to bring dinner. We've been doing this for years." She continued down the line, naming people who weren't there. "Patricia always wants extra ketchup. Roberto prefers his nuggets well done. Susan likes to save her apple slices for last." She took multiple photos from different angles, then wrote detailed notes in her notebook about each imaginary person's preferences. When she finished her documentation, she looked directly at me with that unnaturally wide smile. "Sarah, you've been working extra hard tonight. I made sure your Happy Meal has extra cookies." My name isn't Sarah. My name tag clearly read Lisa. I'd corrected her twice during previous visits. "Ma'am, my name is Lisa." "Of course it is, Sarah. You're such a dedicated worker. Always here when we need you." She gathered her phone and notebook, waved goodbye to the Happy Meals, and left us standing there in complete confusion. Night 6, November 13th, she brought props. Along with the usual 6 Happy Meals, she carried in a folding chair and a small plastic tablecloth. She set up the chair facing our counter, spread the tablecloth over a section of our seating area, and arranged the Happy Meals like place settings at a dinner table. Then she sat down and started having a full conversation with invisible people. "How was your shift tonight, Marcus? Did you get that promotion you applied for? I hope management finally recognizes how valuable you are." She paused like she was listening to a response, nodding and smiling. "Jennifer, how's your mother feeling after her surgery? I brought some extra apple slices in case she's visiting tonight and gets hungry." Another pause, more nodding. "Timmy, you need to eat your vegetables. I know the apple slices aren't your favorite, but they're good for you. Growing boys need proper nutrition." She continued this one-sided conversation for 20 minutes, asking about family members, work schedules, personal problems, and weekend plans. She responded to answers we couldn't hear, laughed at jokes we couldn't understand, and showed genuine concern for problems that didn't exist. That's when I realized this woman wasn't just eccentric or lonely, she was having a complete break from reality. In her mind, she was surrounded by coworkers, friends, people who depended on her nightly food delivery. She wasn't buying Happy Meals for us. She was maintaining relationships with people who existed only in her memory. I called the police while she continued her dinner party conversation. Officer Davidson arrived about 20 minutes later. The woman, we learned her name was Margaret Torres, was still talking to the Happy Meals, now discussing weekend plans with her invisible friends. Officer Chin approached gently, the way you'd approach a frightened animal. "Ma'am, are you okay? Do you need help getting home tonight?" Margaret looked up, surprised by the interruption. "I'm fine, officer. Just having dinner with my work friends. We do this every night after our shifts." "What's your job, ma'am?" "I work at McDonald's. Night shift supervisor. These are my coworkers, Marcus, Jennifer, Timmy, Patricia, Roberto, and Susan. We've worked together for 15 years. Best team I've ever managed." Officer Chin looked at us, then back at Margaret. "Ma'am, this is McDonald's, but you don't work here. These people behind the counter are the actual employees." Margaret's smile faded for the first time since I'd met her. She looked around our restaurant like she was seeing it for the first time, taking in the details. Different layout, different colors, different equipment than whatever McDonald's existed in her memory. This is Industrial Boulevard. My McDonald's is on Route 99, near Valley Medical Center. Where are Marcus and Jennifer? Where's little Timmy?" Her voice cracked with confusion and growing panic. Officer Chin ran her information through the system. Margaret Torres, age 54, unemployed, previous address listed as an apartment complex near the old Route 99 McDonald's location. No criminal history, but 3 calls from family members requesting welfare checks over the past 6 months. He contacted her emergency contact, her sister Linda, who lived in Fresno. "Oh God, not again," Linda said when Officer Chen explained the situation. "We've been worried about her. She keeps talking about work friends who don't exist anymore." Linda drove down immediately to explain Margaret's situation. The Route 99 McDonald's had closed 3 years ago when the franchise owner retired and couldn't find a buyer. Margaret had worked there for 17 years. Always the overnight shift, always the same crew. She was devastated when they closed. Linda explained. Applied to every McDonald's in the area, but they kept hiring younger people for less money. Her unemployment benefits ran out 8 months ago. She's been struggling. According to Linda, Margaret had become obsessed with her former coworkers. Marcus Rivera had died in a car accident 2 years ago, hit by a drunk driver on his way home from work. Jennifer Walsh had moved to Phoenix after the restaurant closed, got married, started a new life. Timmy Johnson had been the youngest member of their crew, barely 18 when Margaret trained him. He joined the military after losing his job. She still sets places for them at dinner every night, Linda said, tears in her eyes. She talks about what Marcus would think about current events, what Jennifer's kids are doing in school, whether Timmy is eating enough in the army. The other coworkers too, Patricia, Roberto, Susan. They were her whole world. Margaret had been spending her nights driving around Bakersfield, looking for her old friends, trying to recreate the routine that had defined her adult life. The Happy Meal ritual wasn't random charity. It was her attempt to maintain the nightly dinner breaks they used to share during slow periods. We used to pool our money and buy food for each other, Linda explained. Margaret always made sure everyone ate, especially the younger workers who couldn't afford much. She was like a mother to them. Officer Chen arranged for Margaret to be evaluated by mental health services. She wasn't dangerous, just lost in a world that had disappeared around her. Linda promised to ensure she received proper psychiatric care and medication. As they were leaving, Margaret turned back to look at the Happy Meals still arranged on our counter. "Will you make sure Marcus gets his extra ketchup?" she asked me quietly. "He doesn't like to ask, but he always needs more than what comes in the packets." "I'll make sure," I promised, even though Marcus had been dead for 2 years. We didn't see Margaret again after that night, but I couldn't stop thinking about her. 17 years of the same routine, the same people, the same conversations during 3 a.m. dinner breaks. When that stability disappeared, her mind had created its own version to fill the void. I started paying more attention to our regular customers after that. The trucker who always ordered the same coffee, black with 2 sugars. The hospital orderly who bought chocolate chip cookies for her patients. The factory worker who came in every night at exactly 4:30 a.m. for an Egg McMuffin. How many of them were using our restaurant as an anchor point in lives that had lost their structure? How many were holding on to routines that kept them connected to versions of themselves that felt more real than their current circumstances? 2 months later, I quit the overnight shift. Not because of Margaret, she wasn't dangerous, just heartbroken. But because I realized how easy it would be to disappear into routine, to have your entire identity tied to one place, one schedule, one group of people who gave your life meaning. What happens when that world ends and you're left with nothing but the memory of conversations that will never happen again? Margaret taught me that the scariest thing isn't always someone trying to hurt you. Sometimes it's someone trying so desperately to hold on to a world that doesn't exist anymore that they'll create elaborate fantasies just to keep breathing. Here's what I want you to think about. Have you ever worked somewhere so long that the place became your whole identity? What would you do if that stability disappeared overnight? How well do you really know the people who depend on routine and familiar faces to stay connected to reality? Because sometimes the people who seem the strangest are just the ones who loved something so much that losing it broke their grip on what's real. What I didn't know was that the Route 99 McDonald's location held more secrets than just Margaret's memories. 3 days after her incident, a construction crew breaking ground for a new strip mall made a discovery that connected her story to something much darker. I worked nights at Shell Station on Riverside Drive in Springfield, Ohio for 6 months in 2023. What happened with Derek, our overnight attendant, still makes me question how well we really know our coworkers. The Shell sat at a busy intersection serving late-night traffic. Truckers, shift workers, people traveling cross-country. Our overnight crew was Derek manning on pump duty and customer service, me handling register and inventory. Derek had worked there 3 years, reliable guy, mid-30s, always helpful with customers. December 2nd, 2023, around 1:15 a.m., a woman pulled up in a 2017 Toyota Camry, white with Pennsylvania plates. She looked exhausted, maybe late 20s, traveling alone with luggage in her back seat. Derek immediately went outside to help. "Looks like you're on a long trip," I heard him say through the intercom. "Everything okay?" She explained she was driving from Pittsburgh to her sister's place in Columbus, got turned around in our area. Derek spent 15 minutes giving detailed directions, drew a map on receipt paper, even recommended a 24-hour diner ahead. "Drive safe," he said. "Roads get tricky around here at night." Normal customer service, nothing unusual. Derek was always like that, went out of his way to help people, especially women traveling alone. December 4th, different woman, similar situation. 2019 Honda Accord, silver, Ohio plates ending in 23. Young professional type, maybe early 30s, pulled up around 2:30 a.m. looking stressed. She'd missed her exit. Phone GPS wasn't working properly. Derek spent even longer with this one. Gave directions, let her use our bathroom, brought her free coffee from our machine. When she mentioned feeling unsafe driving alone so late, Derek offered to follow her to the highway in his personal vehicle. "I get off in 4 hours anyway," he told her. "Don't mind making sure you get to the interstate safely." She declined politely, but Derek walked out to his car, a 2015 Ford F-150, dark blue, and followed her out of our lot. I watched through security cameras as his truck trailed her sedan for several blocks before both vehicles disappeared from view. He returned 20 minutes later. "Just wanted to make sure she found the on-ramp," he explained. "Lot of weird people out here at night." December 7th, another woman. This time a 2020 Nissan Rogue, red, Michigan plates. She'd been driving since Detroit, looked exhausted, needed directions to a hotel. Derek gave his usual detailed help, but when she pulled away, he immediately grabbed his keys. "She seemed really nervous," he told me. "Gonna make sure she gets to that hotel okay." He was gone 45 minutes this time. When he returned, I asked where the hotel was. "Turned out she changed her mind," Derek said. "Decided to keep driving through the night. I followed her to make sure she got back on the highway safely." I started paying closer attention to Derek's interactions with female customers. The pattern was always the same: late night, women traveling alone, Derek offering extensive help, then following them when they left. December 12th, I decided to test something. When Derek went to follow another woman, this one in a 2018 Chevrolet Malibu, gray, Indiana plates, I checked our security system timestamps. Derek left at 2:47 a.m., returned at 4:23 a.m. Nearly 2 hours. No hotel or highway on-ramp required a 2-hour round trip from our location. I called my supervisor, Janet Rodriguez, the next morning. Explained Derek's pattern of following customers. She promised to review security footage and speak with Derek. "He's probably just being helpful," she said. "But we can't have employees leaving the station unattended for hours." December 15th, Janet installed additional cameras in our parking lot and required Derek to get permission before leaving the premises. Derek seemed annoyed but compliant. That night, a woman in a 2016 Subaru Outback, green, Wisconsin plates, stopped for gas around 1:30 a.m. College-aged, traveling home for winter break. Derek gave his usual helpful routine, but when she left, he stayed put. 30 minutes later, Derek's personal phone rang. He answered immediately. "Yeah, I saw you leave." No, it's fine." "You're not sure where you are?" "Okay, stay put, I'll come find you." He grabbed his keys and headed for the door. "Derek, you need permission to leave," I reminded him. "Emergency," he said. "That girl from earlier is lost and scared. She called asking for help." He was gone before I could stop him. Returned 3 hours later at 5:15 a.m., just before day's shift arrived. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, found her pulled over about 10 miles out. Car trouble. Waited with her until roadside assistance came. But when I checked our call log, no one had called the station that night." Derek's story didn't match the phone records. I reported this to Janet, who contacted Derek's references from his original job application. 2 previous employers reported similar behavior. Derek had been fired from a truck stop in Dayton for leaving his post to help female customers, and terminated from a convenience store in Cincinnati for excessive interaction with women traveling alone. Janet confronted Derek on December 18th. Initially, he maintained his story about helping stranded customers. When pressed about the phone call discrepancy, he admitted he'd been giving women his personal cell number. "I just want to make sure they're safe," Derek insisted. "Roads are dangerous for women at night. I'm trying to be a gentleman." Janet demanded Derek's phone. The text messages revealed the truth. Derek had been collecting phone numbers from female customers, then texting them after they left the station. When they didn't respond or seemed confused, he'd claim they'd contacted him for help and used that as an excuse to leave work and find them. The messages showed escalating behavior. "Hey, it's Derek from the Shell station. Just checking you got home safe. Saw you were having car trouble. I'm off work soon if you need help. You seemed upset earlier. I'm good at listening if you want to talk. I know you're probably sleeping, but I'm worried about you." Some women had blocked his number. Others had responded with confusion or requests to stop contacting them. Derek interpreted any response as invitation for further contact. The most disturbing discovery was Derek's photo gallery. He'd been taking pictures of license plates, using online databases to find registered addresses, then driving past these women's homes to check on them. One folder contained over 40 photos of a woman's apartment complex in Columbus. Timestamps showed Derek had driven there 12 times over 2 months, photographing her building, parking lot, and the same white Toyota Camry I'd seen that first night in December. Janet fired Derek immediately and called police. Detective Lisa Thompson reviewed the evidence and identified a pattern of stalking behavior involving at least 15 women over 3 years. Derek had been using his job position to identify vulnerable targets, women traveling alone, unfamiliar with the area, needing directions. His helpful demeanor gained their trust, allowed him to collect personal information, and his work schedule gave him freedom to follow them. Several women came forward after Derek's arrest. They described receiving unwanted texts, finding the same blue Ford F-150 in their neighborhoods, and feeling watched. One woman had moved apartments after noticing Derek's truck parked outside her workplace repeatedly. Derek Manning was charged with multiple counts of stalking, harassment, and criminal trespass. He pleaded guilty to avoid trial and received 2 years in prison plus mandatory psychological counseling. The Shell station implemented new policies. Employees cannot leave premises during shifts, customer interactions must be brief and professional, and security cameras now monitor all employee activity. I transferred to day's shift after Derek's arrest. Working nights alone felt different, knowing how easily someone can use a position of trust to hunt for victims. Derek seemed like the ideal coworker, helpful, reliable, customer-focused. What I learned was that predators often choose jobs that provide access to vulnerable people and legitimate reasons to collect personal information. Think about this. How well do you know the people who have access to your personal information through their jobs? When someone offers help in a vulnerable situation, how do you verify their intentions? What would you do if that helpful gas station attendant showed up at your home uninvited? Because sometimes the most dangerous people are those who seem most eager to help. Derek's case was closed, but his arrest led investigators to review unsolved missing persons cases along major highways. What they discovered connected his hunting ground to a network of similar crimes spanning 3 states. I worked as a night ranger at Pinehurst State Forest in North Carolina for 4 years. What I discovered in February 2024 during routine patrols still makes me check my windows at night and question whether we're ever truly alone in the wilderness. Pinehurst covers 12,000 acres of dense woodland, hiking trails, and camping areas spread across the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Night rangers patrol for poachers, illegal camping, fire hazards, and equipment theft. Just me and my radio most nights, driving Forest Service roads in a 2019 Ford Ranger, forest green with NC Parks decals and emergency lighting. I'd been working nights for 4 years by February 2024. You learn the rhythms of the forest, which animals move when, how weather affects visibility, where people like to set up illegal camps. Most nights were quiet patrols checking campgrounds, monitoring trail access points, and responding to the occasional emergency call. February had been brutal weather-wise. Heavy rains for 3 weeks straight, washing out several access roads and changing sight lines through bare winter trees. Water levels in creeks were dangerously high, several bridges were compromised, and we'd closed multiple trail sections for safety. February 18, 2024, around 3:20 a.m., I was checking the northern sector along Ridge Road when I noticed something that stopped me cold. I'd been patrolling these woods for years, Knew every trail marker, every clearing, every authorized structure. But there was a small cabin about 200 yards off Trail 7 that I'd never seen before. At first, I figured it might be an old hunting shack revealed by the storms and bare trees. Happens sometimes when heavy weather changes the landscape. Maybe it had always been there, hidden by summer foliage and undergrowth. But as I got closer with my spotlight, details became clear. This wasn't some forgotten structure. The building looked new, fresh lumber, proper foundation work, even solar panels mounted on the roof. Someone had built a substantial structure without permits in protected state forest land. I parked the ranger truck and hiked in to investigate. The cabin was maybe 12 by 16 feet, constructed with professional-grade materials. No construction debris around the site, no access road leading to it. Whoever built this had carried everything in on foot and cleaned up meticulously afterward. The front door was unlocked, which seemed odd for such a remote location. I called out to announce my presence, standard protocol when investigating unauthorized structures. No response. What I found inside made my blood run cold. The interior looked like a professional surveillance operations center. One entire wall was covered with monitors, 12 screens showing live feeds from cameras positioned throughout the forest. These weren't our official trail cameras. These were hidden surveillance devices showing campgrounds, parking areas, popular hiking spots, and trail intersections. I recognized every location on the screens. Overlook Point where families liked to picnic. The swimming hole near Cedar Creek where teenagers hung out. The backcountry camping area reserved for serious hikers. Someone had been systematically monitoring every major activity area in the forest. Equipment covered every surface. Radio scanners tuned to park service frequencies, computer servers humming quietly, charging stations for dozens of electronic devices, weather monitoring equipment, and communication gear I didn't recognize. This was sophisticated, expensive, professional-grade surveillance technology. Maps covered the remaining wall space, detailed topographic charts of the forest marked with colored pins. Red pins at regular camping spots, blue pins along popular hiking routes, yellow pins that looked suspiciously like our standard patrol routes. Someone had been tracking not just visitors, but our security patterns. Filing cabinets lined one wall, and what I found inside made me realize this wasn't just surveillance. It was systematic hunting preparation. Detailed folders on frequent forest visitors, professional photographs, license plates, camping schedules, personal information. One folder labeled Families with Children contained dozens of profiles, family compositions, typical arrival times, preferred campsites, ages of children, vehicle descriptions, even notes about family dynamics observed during their visits. Another folder labeled Lone Female Hikers made my stomach turn. Photographs of women hiking alone, their vehicle information, detailed camping locations, notes about their routines and preferred trails. Some photos looked like they'd been taken with telephoto lenses from concealed positions. A third folder marked Regular Visitors Weekly Schedule contained detailed profiles of families who came every weekend, retirees who hiked the same trails every Tuesday, photography enthusiasts who visited during specific seasons. Whoever had compiled this knew more about our regular visitors than park management did. I radioed dispatch immediately, trying to keep my voice steady. Dispatch, this is Ranger Mitchell, badge 247. I need law enforcement at Trail 7, Sector 12 ASAP. Found unauthorized structure containing extensive surveillance equipment. Requesting immediate backup and possible FBI notification. Dispatcher Sarah Chin had been working nights as long as I had. She knew I didn't make dramatic calls without cause. Copy, Ranger Mitchell. Deputies Williams and Lopez are 20 minutes out. State Police en route. Are you in immediate danger? Negative, but this is bigger than a simple trespassing case. Someone's been systematically surveilling park visitors for months, possibly years. While waiting for backup, I documented everything with my phone camera, being careful not to disturb evidence. The sophistication was deeply disturbing. This represented months of planning, significant financial investment, and detailed knowledge of forest operations. One computer screen showed a spreadsheet tracking visitor patterns. Family of 4, Site 15, arrives Fridays 6 p.m., departs Sundays 11 a.m., 2 children ages 8 to 10, parents argue frequently, mother walks alone to restroom building around 10 p.m. Another entry. Solo female hiker, red Honda Civic Ohio plates JKL 8392, backpacks trail for every other Saturday, campsite 23, typically alone until Sunday afternoon, carries expensive camera equipment. The level of detail was chilling. These weren't casual observations. They were systematic intelligence profiles compiled by someone with extensive surveillance experience. One folder caught my attention. Isolated incident opportunities. It contained maps marking locations where people would be most vulnerable, remote camping areas, trail sections with no cell coverage, access points far from main roads. Each location included timing notes about when these areas were typically empty of other visitors. Deputy Marcus Williams arrived first, followed by Sergeant Jennifer Lopez. Both were experienced officers who'd worked with Park Service before. When I showed them what I'd found, they immediately called for additional resources. Jesus Christ, Deputy Williams muttered, looking at the surveillance feeds. How long has this been operating? Had to be built recently, I explained. I patrol this area at least twice monthly. Would have noticed construction activity. Sergeant Lopez was examining the computer equipment. This is federal-level surveillance gear. Someone spent serious money on this operation. We secured the scene and called in a forensics team from the State Bureau of Investigation. What they discovered over the next 12 hours was worse than surveillance. It was systematic preparation for predatory crimes. The computers contained over 18 months of data collection. Hidden cameras positioned throughout the forest, triggered by motion sensors, recording everyone who passed certain checkpoints. The system could track individual visitors across multiple locations and visits, building comprehensive behavioral profiles. The database contained detailed records on over 400 regular forest visitors, names, addresses, family compositions, typical schedules, preferred activities, vehicle information, even social media accounts cross-referenced with public records. Whoever ran this operation knew more about park visitors than we did. Detective Robert Anderson from the State Bureau took over the investigation. Fingerprints on the equipment matched Thomas Garrett, a 38-year-old male with prior convictions for cyber-stalking and electronic surveillance. He'd been released from federal prison 8 months earlier after serving 4 years for stalking women through dating apps and social media. Thomas's parole officer, Detective Anderson discovered, had lost contact with him 6 weeks before we found the cabin. He'd been required to check in weekly, but had stopped reporting and couldn't be located at his registered address. The surveillance network was designed to identify vulnerable targets and create opportunities for contact. Families with young children camping in remote areas, women hiking alone on predictable schedules, elderly couples who visited regularly and followed established routines. The system could predict when and where specific people would be isolated and vulnerable. Most disturbing was a folder marked Action Plans. It contained detailed preparations for approaching selected targets, optimal timing for contact, isolation strategies, equipment needed for extended interaction, escape routes mapped with GPS coordinates. Thomas had been planning abductions, but we'd interrupted his preparation phase. The computer system had been infiltrated into our official park management network. Thomas somehow gained access to our permit system, trail camera footage, and patrol schedules. He'd been using our own surveillance infrastructure to enhance his intelligence gathering. FBI cybercrime specialists traced the equipment purchases. Thomas had spent over $60,000 on surveillance technology, funded by identity theft and credit card fraud. He'd been stealing personal information from camping reservation systems and online permit applications. The cabin itself revealed more disturbing details. Thomas had been living there intermittently for months, using solar power and rainwater collection systems. Completely off-grid and invisible to normal detection. Food supplies, camping gear, and personal items suggested extended stays. A hidden compartment contained restraint devices, sedatives, and detailed maps of abandoned buildings within 50 miles of the forest. Thomas had been preparing locations for holding victims after abduction. Search teams found 5 additional camouflaged observation posts throughout the forest, each equipped with motion sensors, cameras, and communication equipment, positioned to monitor different trail intersections and camping areas. The entire 12,000-acre forest had become his hunting ground. One observation post overlooked the children's nature center. Another monitored the parking area where school buses dropped off field trip groups. A third watched the primitive camping area where scouts and youth groups stayed overnight. Thomas Garrett was arrested 3 days later at a truck stop in Virginia, found with camping gear, detailed maps of state parks in Virginia and Tennessee, and surveillance equipment for expanding his network. He'd been systematically scouting other forests for similar operations. During interrogation, Thomas admitted to 18 months of surveillance but claimed he was just watching and studying human behavior. Evidence suggested otherwise. He'd been building toward abduction attempts but hadn't acted on his plans yet. Computer forensics revealed Thomas had been communicating with other individuals involved in similar surveillance operations. The FBI traced connections to illegal surveillance networks in 7 states, suggesting coordinated predatory activity across the eastern United States. Thomas's browser history showed extensive research into missing persons cases, unsolved disappearances in national parks, and techniques for disposing of evidence in wilderness areas. He'd been studying successful abduction cases and learning from others' mistakes. Thomas Garrett was sentenced to 15 years federal prison for cyberstalking, identity theft, electronic surveillance, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. His computer contained enough evidence to support additional charges in multiple states. The investigation revealed family connections that made my blood run cold. Thomas was the younger brother of Paul Garrett, the same Paul Garrett who'd been stalking single fathers and their children using cemetery surveillance, the case that had made news 8 months earlier. The brothers had been sharing information and techniques. Thomas's forest surveillance had identified several families with children who matched Paul's targeting criteria. They'd been building a coordinated network of predators who could share intelligence across different hunting grounds. Pinehurst implemented comprehensive security upgrades, random patrol schedule changes, encrypted radio communications, weekly sweeps for unauthorized electronics, background checks for all vendors and contractors with forest access, and coordination with FBI's cybercrime units for ongoing monitoring. I stayed on as night ranger but completely changed my approach. Every structure gets investigated immediately, regardless of how familiar it seems. Every piece of equipment gets verified against our inventory. Every regular visitor gets extra attention to ensure they're not being systematically observed. Trail cameras throughout the forest were replaced with tamper-proof models using encrypted signals. We installed counter-surveillance equipment to detect unauthorized electronic devices. Patrol routes became randomized and unpredictable. The psychological impact lasted months. Knowing someone had been watching me patrol, tracking my schedule, possibly planning to eliminate me as a security obstacle was deeply disturbing. I installed security systems at my own home and changed my personal routines completely. 6 months later, FBI investigators discovered the full scope of the Garrett network. The brothers had been part of a larger organization of predators who shared surveillance techniques and intelligence across 12 states. They'd been operating for over 5 years, possibly connected to several unsolved disappearances in remote areas. Thomas's computers contained detailed files on national parks, state forests, and wilderness areas across the eastern United States. He'd been systematically identifying locations with minimal security, predictable visitor patterns, and limited law enforcement presence. The scariest realization was how long the surveillance had been operating undetected. Thomas had been watching families, children, women, elderly visitors for over a year while I drove past his hiding spots thinking everything was normal. Professional surveillance experts who reviewed the case said Thomas's operation was among the most sophisticated they'd encountered. The level of planning, investment, and systematic approach suggested military or intelligence training. Here's what keeps me awake, When you visit parks, forests, or wilderness areas, how do you know you're not being systematically observed and catalogued? How many remote locations have hidden watchers documenting your movements and building profiles for future use? What would you do if you discovered someone had been tracking your outdoor activities for months, learning your routines, identifying when you're most vulnerable? How would you know if your favorite camping spot or hiking trail had become someone's hunting ground? The woods are supposed to represent escape from urban dangers, connection with nature, peaceful solitude away from human threats. But predators adapt to any environment, and sometimes the most remote places hide the most sophisticated dangers. Thomas Garrett turned wilderness areas into hunting preserves, using technology to track human prey with the same systematic approach hunters use for wildlife. The difference is that his intended targets were families, children, and vulnerable individuals who trusted that natural areas were safe. Consider this carefully. Every time you visit a park, post photos on social media, use reservation systems, or follow predictable outdoor routines, you're potentially providing intelligence to people who view wilderness areas as opportunities rather than recreation. The Garrett brothers proved that predators can be patient, systematic, and coordinated. They can spend years building surveillance networks, sharing information, and preparing for crimes that might never be detected because they occur in remote areas where people go to disappear temporarily. What if I hadn't found that cabin during my routine patrol? How many families would have vanished during their peaceful camping trips? How many solo hikers would have disappeared on trails they thought were safe and familiar? The next time you're alone in the woods, remember that the silence might not be as empty as it seems. Someone might be watching, documenting, planning. The most dangerous predators are those with enough patience to study their environment and their prey for seasons before making their move. Federal investigators eventually traced the Garrett surveillance network to 14 similar operations across the eastern United States, revealing a coordinated system of predators who had been sharing intelligence and techniques for over 8 years. The investigation led to 23 arrests and may have prevented dozens of planned abductions in remote wilderness areas across multiple states. This completes our 4-story collection revealing how systematic predators infiltrate every environment where people seek safety, solitude, or routine comfort. From cemeteries to restaurants to gas stations to state forests, no location is immune to those who would exploit human trust and vulnerability for predatory purposes. I worked night security at the Westfield Natural History Museum in Denver, Colorado for 18 months. What happened with Eleanor Vasquez in March 2024 still makes me question how well we really know the people who visit public spaces religiously. The Westfield Natural History Museum sits on University Avenue, a massive 3-story building housing geology, paleontology, and modern wildlife exhibits. Built in 1987, it covers over 120,000 square feet with permanent collections and rotating displays. Night security was a solo position, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., just me with keycard access, radio contact with central dispatch, and responsibility for the entire facility. I'd been working nights there since September 2022. The routine was straightforward: lock all public entrances after day staff finished closing procedures, walk each floor hourly checking for equipment issues or unauthorized access, monitor 12 security cameras covering main corridors and exhibit halls, respond to any alarms or unusual activity. Most nights were quiet. Occasional maintenance issues, false alarms from sensitive motion detectors, or problems with climate control systems affecting the fossil preservation areas. The building made normal settling noises, especially during temperature changes, but you learned to distinguish between structural sounds and actual problems. March 3, 2024, around 11:30 p.m., I was conducting my second patrol of the night in the Paleontology Hall when I heard distinct footsteps coming from the mammal exhibit directly above me. Not the random creaking or settling sounds you expect in old buildings. These were rhythmic, deliberate footsteps. High heels clicking on marble floors. The museum had been officially closed for 90 minutes. Day security supervisor Rebecca Torres always did a thorough sweep before locking up. All visitors should have been escorted out by 5:30 p.m., with staff finishing cleanup and exhibit maintenance by 6 p.m. I immediately climbed the central staircase to the second-floor mammal hall and called out in my official capacity. "Security! Museum is closed. Anyone in the building needs to identify themselves immediately." The footsteps stopped. Complete silence. I searched systematically, every exhibit area, storage rooms, public restrooms, staff offices, even checked behind the larger display cases where someone might hide. Found nothing unusual, but noticed the air near the African wildlife diorama felt warm, like someone had been standing there recently breathing on the glass. I radioed Central Dispatch to report possible intruder, but without visual confirmation or triggered alarms, they classified it as a false alarm. Told me to continue normal patrol and report any further disturbances. March 5th, same phenomenon. Around midnight, I heard movement in the geology section, footsteps and what sounded like a woman's voice speaking softly, like someone reading exhibit information aloud to themselves. This time I moved more quietly, trying to catch whoever was inside. When I reached the mineral display area, I found it empty but warm, with a faint scent of lavender perfume lingering in the air. Someone had definitely been there within minutes of my arrival. I spent extra time searching, checking every possible hiding spot including maintenance areas and emergency exits. All doors remained locked from the inside, no alarms triggered, no sign of forced entry. Whoever was getting in had legitimate access, or knew security procedures intimately. March 8th, I finally caught her on security cameras. Woman in her mid-50s, gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing a long navy blue coat and carrying a large leather purse. She was standing calmly in the paleontology section at 12:45 a.m., nearly 4 hours after official closing time, examining the Triceratops skeleton like it was normal daytime visiting hours. I rushed to the location immediately, but she was gone. Checked all exits, no alarms triggered, all doors still locked and secure from the inside. She had somehow vanished without trace. The next morning, I reviewed all camera footage with Day's supervisor Janet Martinez. The mystery woman appeared on multiple camera angles over several nights, always alone, always examining exhibits with intense concentration and obvious familiarity. She moved through the museum like she belonged there, knew exactly where everything was located. "Do you recognize this woman?" I asked Janet, showing her the clearest footage. "Oh yeah, that's Eleanor. Eleanor Vasquez. She's here almost every single day during regular hours. Knows more about our exhibits than most of our staff. Sometimes volunteers to help guide school groups when we're short-staffed. Harmless old lady who absolutely loves natural history." But that didn't explain how Eleanor was accessing the building after hours without triggering any security measures. March 12th, I decided to arrive early and position myself where I could observe the closing procedures. Eleanor was indeed among the visitors that day, one of the last to leave at 5 p.m. when public hours ended. I watched Day's security conduct their standard sweep of all areas, lock every entrance, and activate the overnight alarm system. At 11:15 p.m., Eleanor appeared on internal cameras. She was inside the building, calmly walking through the geology section. She had never actually left. Took me 2 more days to find her hiding spot. Small utility closet near the staff restrooms on the first floor, furnished with a folding chair, wool blanket, thermos bottle, and box of crackers. She'd been staying overnight regularly, probably for weeks or months. Eleanor had memorized our security patrol's schedule down to the minute. She knew exactly when I'd be on each floor, which routes I typically took, how long I spent in each section. During daytime hours, she acted like any other dedicated museum visitor. After closing, she had the entire facility to herself. When I finally confronted her on March 15th around 1:30 a.m., found her sitting quietly in front of the planetarium display reading a book by small flashlight. She seemed genuinely confused about why this was a problem. "I'm not hurting anything," she said politely. "I just want to spend quality time with my friends here. During the day, there are so many people, so much noise, children running around. At night, I can really appreciate the exhibits properly, study them without interruption." Eleanor Vasquez was a 67-year-old widow whose husband had died 3 years earlier after a long battle with pancreatic cancer. She'd been visiting the museum daily since shortly after his funeral, initially as grief therapy recommended by her counselor. Museum staff knew her as a dedicated volunteer and generous donor. She'd contributed over $15,000 to exhibit maintenance over 2 years. What they didn't know was that Eleanor had been gradually spending more time at the museum because she was losing her home. Medical bills from her husband's cancer treatment had consumed their savings and retirement funds. Medicare covered basic treatments, but not experimental therapies they'd hoped might extend his life. After his death, Eleanor couldn't maintain mortgage payments on her teacher's pension alone. She'd lost the house to foreclosure 6 months earlier, but was too ashamed to tell family members or ask for help. She'd been staying in homeless shelters, extended stay motels when she had money, sometimes sleeping in her 2011 Honda Civic when other options weren't available. "This place makes me feel useful," Eleanor explained as security cameras recorded our conversation. "I know every exhibit, every artifact, every piece of scientific information. I help visitors understand what they're seeing. Families ask me questions and I can give them real answers. At night, I can study everything without interruption, really absorb the knowledge." Eleanor had been completely harmless, never damaged anything, never stole anything, actually helped maintain exhibits by reporting maintenance issues she noticed during her overnight stays. She'd been carefully disposing of trash, keeping her hiding area spotless, even dusting display cases she passed during her nocturnal explorations. The museum was her sanctuary, her community, her sense of identity and purpose. When official closing time came each day, she literally couldn't bear to leave the only place where she felt valuable and intellectually stimulated. "My husband used to say I should have been a paleontologist," she continued. "I know more about dinosaurs than most people with degrees. Here, I can share that knowledge. People listen to me. They respect what I know." Museum administration held emergency meetings to address Eleanor's situation. Legal department confirmed she was trespassing and could be prosecuted, but everyone agreed that wasn't appropriate given her circumstances and harmless intentions. Director Patricia Hammond worked with City Social Services to find Eleanor proper housing through senior assistance programs. Museum Board of Directors created a part-time paid position for her as senior docent, providing steady income and official after-hours access for exhibit research. Eleanor never stayed overnight again after receiving proper housing, but continued visiting daily as a legitimate employee. She became one of our most popular tour guides, especially for school groups who were fascinated by her encyclopedic knowledge of natural history. The incident made me realize how public institutions like museums can become lifelines for isolated, desperate people. Eleanor wasn't breaking in to steal artifacts or cause damage. She was staying because the museum was literally the only place in her life where she felt valuable, connected to community, and intellectually fulfilled. 3 months later, while reviewing security protocols, I discovered Eleanor's situation wasn't unique. 2 other regular visitors had been secretly staying overnight in different sections of the museum. Margaret Chin, a 73-year-old retired librarian, had been hiding in the research library after her apartment became unaffordable due to rent increases. She'd been sleeping behind the periodical stacks and using the staff restroom for hygiene needs. Robert Martinez, a 58-year-old former geology professor who'd lost his job due to university budget cuts, had been staying in the mineral storage area. He'd been conducting unauthorized research on specimens, writing scientific papers he hoped would help him find new employment. All 3 had been drawn to the museum not as shelter of last resort, but as the only place where their knowledge and expertise were valued. They weren't typical homeless individuals. They were educated, formerly middle-class people who'd lost economic stability but retained intellectual passions. Museum administration revised policies to identify and assist visitors who might be using the facility as housing. Created partnerships with social services, senior assistance programs, and professional networking organizations to address underlying problems rather than simply removing people. We also upgraded security systems to detect after-hours presence more effectively, but focused on connecting people with resources rather than prosecution. Museum became a model for how cultural institutions can address homelessness among educated populations. The psychological impact on me was significant. Realizing that some of our most dedicated, knowledgeable visitors were actually desperate people clinging to the only place where they felt human dignity was deeply disturbing. Eleanor's case made me understand that obsessive dedication to public spaces can mask profound isolation and economic desperation. When someone visits the same location religiously, they might be seeking more than intellectual stimulation. They might be finding the only community connection available to them. Here's what keeps me thinking: how many lonely, displaced people are using libraries, museums, community centers, and other public spaces as their primary source of social connection and intellectual purpose? When you see someone at the same location obsessively, what are they really seeking beyond the stated mission of that institution? How do you distinguish between genuine enthusiasm and desperate need for belonging? What would you do if you discovered that your favorite volunteer or most dedicated visitor was actually homeless, and using your organization as survival strategy? Eleanor taught me that sometimes the people who seem most devoted to cultural institutions are actually the ones society has forgotten: educated, knowledgeable individuals who've lost economic stability but retained intellectual curiosity and desire to contribute meaningfully to community knowledge. The scariest part wasn't discovering unauthorized overnight visitors. It was realizing how easily desperate people can become invisible, hiding their circumstances while maintaining dignity through volunteer work and intellectual engagement. Museums, libraries, and cultural centers provide more than education and entertainment. They offer intellectual community for people who have nowhere else to demonstrate their knowledge and expertise. When economic circumstances force people from their homes, these institutions become refuges where they can maintain sense of purpose and human worth. Consider this: every time you visit a museum, library, or cultural center, look around at the regular volunteers and frequent visitors. Some might be there every day not just from love of learning, but because it's the only place where they feel valuable, connected, and intellectually alive. What if Eleanor hadn't been discovered? Or if museum administration had simply prosecuted her for trespassing? How many other cultural institutions unknowingly house desperate people who contribute knowledge and volunteer labor while secretly struggling with homelessness? The next time you encounter someone who seems overly invested in a public institution, remember that their dedication might mask circumstances beyond intellectual passion. Sometimes the most knowledgeable volunteers are the ones who have nowhere else to go where their expertise matters. Eleanor's case led to a city-wide review of cultural institutions and their role in addressing educated homelessness. The investigation revealed that over 40 people were secretly using libraries, museums, and community centers as overnight shelter while maintaining appearances as dedicated volunteers and visitors during business hours. Thanks so much for watching. I can't express enough how much your support means. The likes, the comments, it all really helps the channel grow. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. I always take the time to read them. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss out on any new videos. See you next time.